Do you read the Bible, Brett?
Yes.
Well, there's this passage I got memorized that sort of fits this occasion. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Wow, that was amazing.
Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Tatum.
And I'm Geneva.
We are two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week, we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. Hi, Geneva.
Hello, Tatum.
Do you want to go ahead and share with us anything fun that you've been watching this week?
Sure. It's not been a very movie-heavy week for me because I've mostly been continuing with my rewatch of Mad Men, which we discussed last week.
How far are you at this point?
I am now about a few episodes into season 3, maybe a third of the way through season 3.
Okay. Nice.
Continue to be blown away by this show, by the way it tracks the development of these characters. I love the writing of this show and how each episode is kind of a short story in and of itself, and it tends to be focused around some sort of theme that the different storylines are converging around. And so after each episode, I'm thinking, oh, what is this episode about? What is it saying? And I love the way each of the characters are, the kind of slow way you see them develop and make choices when small, mundane things happen in their lives. It's not a show where it's dramatic in the sense that, there's a lot of people sleeping around and people get into car accidents and things like that. But it's also just a show about people living their lives and kind of being confronted by everyday change and realities and having to make decisions and, trying to do whether to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And usually they do the wrong thing, or something will happen and you can see that even if they don't explicitly state it, you can see the way that has affected them and the choices that they make later in something that seems unrelated. This is, I think, particularly true for Betty. I really love Betty. Is such a frustrating character in many ways because she's such a terrible mother and she can be so harsh to the people around her. But she is really fascinating to watch in the ways that she reacts to how limited her circumstances are and how Dawn's betrayal changes her in this profound way. And anyway, so yeah, I continue to be blown away by my watch. In terms of movies, the only really significant thing I did watch this week, apart from Mad Men, is I went to the theater and saw the Titanic 3D re-release.
You saw it in 3D?
In 3D,
Why did
yes.
they keep re-releasing that movie in 3D? I don't understand.
Do not understand. And I will say, so this was only my second time watching it the whole way through. I last watched it the whole way through at the beginning of college, so it's been quite a while at this point. And I'd never seen it in 3D. I will say it was the worst 3D projection I have ever experienced in my life, and I really should have gotten up and said something, but it's one of those situations.
What would that have done if you said anything? Like,
Well,
why
I
was
could
it a
have
bad
gone.
projection?
I should have gone and asked the staff people at the theater if they could check on it and see if they could fix it, and if they couldn't,
Okay.
I might have been able to get some sort of a voucher for a free showing or something like that, because I've experienced things like that before. But it was one of those situations where I was alone in the theater and no one else seemed to be too bothered by it, so I thought maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, so it was, how in 3D there's like different layers that they're creating through the 3D, where some things appear to be closer and some things appear to be further. One of the layers seemed to be messed up, and so you would have a shot where something in the foreground was clear and something in the background was extremely blurry, like you were seeing double basically. And then in
Weird.
the it would be reversed, and the thing in the foreground would be you'd be seeing double, and the thing in the background would be clear. It was very weird.
Something must have been messed up.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it was the theater's fault or if it was the file they had was corrupted, but it was disappointing because it really did, I think, affect my viewing. Titanic is not really a movie that I am in love with. I've never fully connected with the love story, to be completely honest, and I know that's kind of sacrilegious to say. I really I'm fascinated by the story of Titanic. I was obsessed with Titanic when I was a kid. And so I love everything about the movie that is about the real historical characters, about the ship, about the historical context. But the actual love story at the center of it always leaves me a bit cold. And
I don't think that's an uncommon opinion.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way for a long time. I'm like, I like the ending more than anything else in the movie.
That's good. Yeah, that makes
Story wise.
Yeah. Because I definitely in this viewing, projection issues aside, at the end when Rose is spoiler alert, Jack is frozen in the ocean and Rose is whispering, "I won't let go." I could just hear all of the sobbing around me of
Wait,
all
really?
the teenage girls, yes, who'd come
Oh,
to
they
see.
must have never seen the movie before.
No, well, maybe, I don't know, but I would not be
Okay.
surprised if they knew it and they just came because they wanted to see it and sob. I feel like it is that kind of movie for some people where, it's this sort of emotional catharsis you go through, and you experience the hope and then you experience the sadness and then you experience the hope again at the end.
I've never even come close to crying watching that movie.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah, I
But I
was
mean,
completely dried-eyed. But it works for some people and I am happy for them. So,
I find it interesting that you don't connect with it because I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but that's fine. The reason that I don't like the love story is because it's very similar to Romeo and Juliet, and I really don't like that story. I don't connect with the love story at all. Just in general.
you're just not a fan of the two people from opposite sides of the tracks falling in love in a very short period of time.
I just don't think that I don't believe that you can fall in love with someone so quickly in like 2 days that you literally will die for them. But it's not that I don't believe
yeah.
that. Anyway, this is a tangent that I'm not going to go into, but I'll just say I'm surprised because I know you connect with the Romeo and Juliet story. So it surprises me that you don't connect with the Titanic story.
Well, I have to be honest, when I experience Romeo and Juliet stories, it's usually more that I connect with the movie as a whole than that I connect with the love story specifically. I would not say I'm a big,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but I love something like West Side Story, and it's because I think the movie itself is fantastic.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And also I have mixed feelings about Leonardo DiCaprio, which you're aware of and we've talked about before. I like him
Yeah.
a lot as an actor in certain contexts and not in others.
Yeah. I mean, I think Titanic is purely him being a heartthrob at that point in his career.
Yeah, and I've never been sold on a heartthrob Leo. He really does
Me neither.
nothing for me. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm sorry that your projection sucked. That sounds really annoying. Especially
Yeah.
to watch that for like 3.5 hours. Ugh.
yeah, at a certain point I started to tune it out a little bit, but in retrospect, I really am kicking myself for not saying something and possibly gotten a free movie voucher out of it.
But also, who's asking to see that movie in 3D? Like,
I know. This is
it's
also
not it's not a movie that needs to be in 3D, but I don't know. It's just my opinion. Okay. Well,
What about you? Have you seen anything this week?
Nope. No, it's going to continue to be that way probably. But yeah, I haven't watched anything this week other than Pulp Fiction. So yeah, without further ado, I guess let's transition into talking about that.
Let's do it.
So yeah, today on the show, we will be discussing the 1994 masterpiece, Pulp Fiction, Written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, the film stars John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Bruce Willis, Tim Roth, Ving Rhames, Harvey Keitel, Eric Stoltz, Amanda Plummer, Maria de Madero, I don't speak French, and Christopher Walken. That's a lot of people. The film revolves around 3 different stories that weave together in non-chronological order. A young, impulsive couple scheming to rob a diner, 2 hitmen doing the job of acquiring and returning to their mob boss a briefcase holding an unknown precious item, and lastly, a boxer trying to escape LA with his girlfriend after betraying that very same mob boss, Marcellus Wallace. After being a breakout director in 1992 at the age of 29 with his debut film Reservoir Dogs, people awaited Tarantino's second film. Just 2 years later, Pulp Fiction was released, and Quentin Tarantino immediately became a force to be reckoned with. With Pulp Fiction's unique editing style, dialogue, and incredible soundtrack, many fell in love with Tarantino's stories and wanted to see more. However, his career has not gone without criticism. Pulp Fiction is notably somewhat controversial due to Quentin Tarantino's unfiltered depictions of violence and drugs, as well as his unashamed use of the N-word and several other racial profanities. This is actually a common criticism that he has had to defend, that he's had to creatively defend throughout his entire filmography, but regardless, this film grossed approximately $108 million at the U.S. box office, making it the first indie film to surpass $100 million in the country. And this film was not only a hit in the U.S., it was a global hit. And believe it or not, in Britain, the book form of the screenplay became a top 10 bestseller. And I think my father is one of the people who bought the book form of the screenplay. I think he has it somewhere in his stash.
That's really fascinating. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, this movie became iconic. It was one of the most talked about films of that year. People bought the screenplay book. People have had movie posters everywhere. People still have this movie poster up and around. Everyone knows this movie poster.
Foundational movies of the last 30 years.
I feel like as far as movie posters go, everyone knows like Pulp Fiction, Jaws, very specific ones, but Pulp Fiction is definitely one that everyone recognizes. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, just the movie in general, a little bit about the plot and just what happened in that cultural moment when the film came out. It had a huge impact on, it just kind of shook things up at the time. And I wish that I had been old enough to really participate in that conversation. Like if I was my age now when this movie was coming out back at that time, I would have loved being a part of that conversation. It would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was so interesting watching this because this was my first time watching it, as you know. And
hold on, wait, don't say anything yet.
No, I'm not going to give my reaction. I was just going to say it's interesting watching it and saying, oh, this is the origin of a lot of, Pulp Fiction ripoffs, basically, that I have seen throughout my life of, multiple storylines, intersecting characters, very fast, talk heavy, fast-paced dialogue, people having conversations that suddenly interrupt into brutal violence. Like Pulp Fiction didn't invent, multiple interlocking storylines, but a lot of it really, I think, popularized it. And I've seen a lot of crime and crime adjacent movies that ape this style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the reason why I kind of almost cut you short there is because I wanted to say, before you say anything, I just want to communicate to you and to whoever might be listening, I am incredibly nervous right now because I know that Quentin Tarantino is not particularly Geneva's cup of tea all the time. I know she's never seen this movie. Quentin Tarantino is one of my top directors of all time. I love his films. Inglourious Basterds is one of my top favorite movies of all time. And I watched this movie last night. I had not actually seen this movie in probably about 10 years. And rewatching it last night, I actually was debating in my brain. I was like, do I actually like this movie more than Inglourious Basterds? Is this my favorite Quentin Tarantino film? Because it might be. So I was kind of rethinking that process. So this is one of my favorite directors of all time. This is one of my favorite movies he's ever made. I know Geneva is not always a fan of Quentin Tarantino. So I'm very, very nervous right now, Geneva, if you hated the movie, I respect you. I still love you, but I'm terrified. So please tell me what you thought about this movie.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you know I love you as well, and I respect your taste.
Oh, no, I know what's coming. Oh, I'm so upset already. Oh,
No,
my
I will
gosh.
say, I appreciate this movie. I think it is
Oh,
extremely
no.
well made. I'm very glad I saw it. It really made me think, and yeah, I can see why it was so influential. It is very much not my cup of tea. Um, but I think there's a lot of interesting things about it, and I'm very excited to hear all of your thoughts on it and to process it more myself. And yeah, it is. I mean, you said I'm not a big Quentin Tarantino fan. I will say this is only the third of his movies that I've seen, and I liked Inglourious Bastards quite a bit. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I liked for the most part. I did have some mixed feelings about the end. But the Quentin Tarantino movies I'd seen previously, I'm pretty positive on overall. And this one, I would say I appreciate what it's doing and I appreciate the artistry behind it. I don't connect with it a whole lot personally. It just doesn't really, it's not sort of what I go to and usually, moves and excites me when I watch films, but I can appreciate that it is a monumental achievement and yeah, that there is a lot of artistic craft going into it.
Very diplomatically said.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was funny because I invited two friends over last night to watch this movie with me because we'd planned to hang out, and I was like, this is the only time I can see you because this is the only free time I have. So I was watching this movie with them, and I told them while we were watching it, I was like, rewatching this movie, I think I was probably too young when I was showing this movie for the first time.
Oh, you think?
Because this movie, first of all,
I mean, sorry, just to say, I am a, fully grown 30-something woman, and I was in my apartment turning down and down and down the volume because I was afraid my neighbors would hear. Like, I don't know if I want them to hear all of the racial slurs that are coming from my TV right now. I don't know what they'll think.
yeah.
So, it's an intense movie, and yeah, I mean, there are, choices that are made, which I think, were made for a reason, but it is an intense movie. That's all I'll say.
It's funny that you say that because the people that I was watching this movie with last night as well were like, this is an intense movie. They'd seen it before, but they kind of were saying the same thing. This movie's really tense. And for me, I honestly find this movie to be freaking hilarious. I think that this movie is a comedy that has like some drama added to it. And I don't know if that's I don't know why that is. Maybe that's because of how I was raised watching it or whatever. But like Samuel L. Jackson is one of my dad's favorite actors. My dad is obsessed with him.
He's so fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's just incredible. We love him to death. And anyone who doesn't love Samuel L. Jackson, I question your sanity. But yeah, like we would just quote. This movie is so quotable. Like, there's so many things in this that we would just quote all the time growing up of like, oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration? Or like, oh man, I just shot Marvin in the face.
There are a lot of lines in this movie that I was like, I've heard this before and I had no idea it came from this movie.
Yeah, or this is a tasty burger. Check out the big brains on Brad. I mean, there's so many great quotes in this movie, and throughout watching this movie the whole time, I was just dying laughing. I think it's so funny. Obviously, there are some moments in this movie that are not funny at all. I am not able to watch the rape scene. I can't do it. It's very difficult. I think I only have seen it once back when I saw it like one of the first times because I just didn't know what I was getting into. And now I'm like, no, I can't. I won't do this.
Yeah, I'm glad that you warned me about that ahead of time because I also strategically
Yeah.
did not love certain places.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So yeah, it's definitely not like start to finish a thrill ride of just funniness. But that being said, I love how this film is able to juggle those two different tones of it can be so funny in moments when it shouldn't be funny, and then switch to being not funny at all, to then going back to being fun. I don't know. I just think that this movie is so well written. I think it's one of the best screenplays to ever be written, and I think that Quentin Tarantino, he has such a specific writing style, and he is able to just write these really long conversations about nothing. But at the same time, at least in my opinion, they're riveting. You care so much about, did this man actually give this woman a foot massage? Like, did that actually happen? We don't know, but I'm invested and I care, even though they're talking about this for such a long time, and we're just watching them walk from the car through through the yard, up the stairs, down the hallway. Oh wait, it's not time yet. Let's go the other way. Like, it's just, and then they walk in the door and they're not talking about feet anymore. They're threatening people to kill them for, it's just the way that it juggles the different tones, the way that it's written is so unique and so well done. And the editing is, I think that I'm able to appreciate this movie more now than I have in the past because I have a lot more film education under my belt. I've taken a lot of film classes. I've made a lot of my own stuff. I've studied watching a lot more movies and things like that. And the editing in this film is so incredible, which is why that's the only Oscar that it won. I mean, the editing is phenomenal. And I remember there was one class that I took in college where we were talking about how editing works and how in films you can stretch time. And the clip of them stabbing Uma Thurman, it literally in the heart to bring her back from her overdose. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, that was an example in my film class of how you can stretch time, because they probably just took the needle and stabbed her and that was it. But it's like, no, let's have a long shot of just the needle in his hand. Let's have a long shot of her heart with a freaking red drawn dot on it. Let's have a shot of this person staring, of that person staring, like just stretching out that time. And I just think the editing in this movie is ingenious. And I think one of the reasons why this movie is so great is it's not just that the storyline is unique and well written. It's also everything else about it is great. The cinematography, the way the camera moves, the way the lighting works, the costumes, the hair is the hair is so important. Like, the hair is so important to establishing these characters, the editing, the acting choices and the acting direction. Like, even just how Samuel L. Jackson, how when he speaks, he enunciates all of his letters, and he speaks with such. And John Travolta, he has this weird, kind of hilarious limp when he walks. That's so, and the way that him and Uma Thurman, the different ways that they show how they're being high out of it's just the directing here and the acting, all of it is just so well done. I think this is a masterpiece. I think I want to call it a perfect film, but I don't think I can call it that just because of some of the problematic things that are said. And I think they were problematic at the time, but I think as time has gone on, it's aged even worse than it was. And, that just comes with...
We can talk about that and why those decisions were made. One thing, just to add on to the things that are really great about this movie, I was so struck by the cinematography. I think this movie looks absolutely gorgeous. The use of lighting is incredible. The use of color is beautiful. I was just watching it being like, man, I wish half of the movie, oh my goodness, just thinking about the way we are now with this sort of flat, dull, drab Netflix look that it seems like 80% of movies nowadays have, where it's just designed to be the absolute lowest common denominator, the easiest possible way, no thought to blocking, no thought to lighting. And then to compare that to a movie like this, which every single frame looks absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I really, really love the cinematography in this movie.
Yeah. I agree. And just to sound like a completely hoity-toity person, I I don't use this phrase often because I don't want to come across as being like a film person who thinks that they're superior to other people. I don't think that, but this is a word that I will say because I think it applies so perfectly to this movie. The mise en scène in this film is fantastic. And just to, for if there's anyone listening to this that doesn't know what mise en scène is, it's basically the concept of when you look at a frame in a film, or maybe it's in a photograph too, I don't know, but I just learned it in the concept of film. When you look at the frame in a film, mise en scène is like everything that's in the frame. So it's the production design, it's the wardrobe, it's how they're standing, it's the camera, like the way the camera's looking at them. It's everything you see in the frame is the mise en scène.
Visual. Does mise en
Right.
scène, that does not include the auditory aspects, right? It's
No.
purely the
Mm-mm.
visual. Yeah.
Purely the
Hmm.
visual.
Yeah, because I was thinking about some of the frames in the context of the title, Pulp Fiction, which I'd love to talk about what you think that title means. But just in the idea of a sort of pulp novel, from the like we have, ideas of what the covers of pulp novels from the 40s and 50s look like, where it's very, some sort of sordid scene. There's maybe a woman with her cleavage hanging out, and there's a man holding a gun that's smoking because he just shot someone, or something like that. Even though we don't get exact recreations of those types of things in this movie, a lot of this movie, the situations feel like that, and I think the way that the scenes are blocked and framed are often, and the color schemes that are used, I think, often evoke that sort of idea, even if it's not a period movie, and it's not evoking some specific um, pulp situation. It's that pulpy feel that the lighting and the cinematography give it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was definitely Tarantino's intention. He's very known to be an extreme nerd, in terms of growing up and working in a video store and reading comics growing up and watching westerns and all that stuff. And so I think that this movie is definitely him intentionally trying to capture that same sort of visual just theme and point of view, but like put his own spin on it. And I think that that is just fascinating and so creative. And I think that he executes it really well because I think he does a good job of showing that he was influenced by those types of visuals, but also not full on ripping it off or copying it. He does it in his own unique way. And I think it's great. I have a question. What did you think about the opening credits where the woman or Honey Bunny is in the diner and she's kind of shouting at everybody like, everybody shut up or I'm gonna kill it, and then all of a sudden it's just a freeze frame and then Pulp Fiction comes up on the screen and the music starts. Like what did you think about that abrupt transition and then the opening credits with the soundtrack and the words and everything? Did that do anything for you? Like, did it make you pumped for what was coming next? It was just kind of, okay, that's a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if pumped is the right word. I was intrigued. I was definitely intrigued. I
Okay.
did not realize that Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer were in this movie at all. I really only knew about the Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta and Uma Thurman. So yeah, I was a little bit um, surprised and confused and intrigued of, oh, these two characters, and I have no idea what's going on, where the story is going, or anything like that. I do really like, just to talk about the visuals again, but the choice of typography for the title and then for the credits, it definitely
Mm-hmm.
evokes that sort of 40s, 50s, 60s pulpy, detective story feel. I think it really sets an interesting vibe.
Yeah. And I think also one thing that Quentin Tarantino is super well known for is his soundtracks in his movies. He just has a gift for choosing the perfect songs for the perfect moments, for the perfect vibe that he's trying to communicate. And I think Reservoir Dogs was super low budget, so it didn't really, if I remember correctly, I don't think it had a soundtrack at all. And so I think that this film being his second film, and everyone was kind of, okay, Reservoir Dogs was super ballsy. Who is this guy? What's he going to do next? And then he's coming out with a literal bang of just this crazy, but perfect soundtrack right off the bat. And that continues throughout his career. I just love seeing how he started with that. And then he's just like continued to do that with all of his films. Because the soundtrack in this movie is just it's so good. And they're great songs in the context of the movies, but they're also great songs if you're not watching the movie at all and you just want to listen to them. So, yeah, did the soundtrack do anything for you in this movie?
Oh, I cannot say. I think it fit well with the movie. I can't say that I was thinking very specifically about the soundtrack. I was more thinking about the story and what was going on screen.
Okay, gotcha. I was just curious. Yeah, I mean, I just think that his soundtracks are always great no matter what. I mean, I think that the timing of the particular songs that he chose in each scene is perfect and super fitting. But at the same time, I just think that his soundtracks as a whole, they're such bangers. And I think it very deservedly so. He is just known for his soundtracks. And I definitely have all of his film soundtracks downloaded onto newsflash, guys, I still have an iPad or an iPod. So yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So I have all of his soundtracks downloaded, and because they're just so great. And I mean, I can't say I listen to them frequently, but every once in a while I go back to them and I'm like, dang, these soundtracks are so good. You know, they're great in the context of the movie, and they're also great if you just listen to them on their own, and they're fantastic.
Yeah. I do always enjoy a director who's really good at picking songs that are great for the moment. I mean, Danny Boyle's kind of a classic example of that. I know Martin Scorsese is well known for having really good soundtracks or needle drops in his movies. Yeah, it's a rare skill.
So, what did you think of Quentin Tarantino's foot fetish in this movie? We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it.
Do we?
Yes, of course we do.
I mean, there were a few more shots of Uma Thurman's bare feet than I really needed.
Yep, and also I think the taxi driver. There's one point when someone starts accelerating in a vehicle and you see their foot. I don't remember who is that. I don't think it's Uma Thurman's foot, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that there's lots of shots of Uma Thurman's feet, of whoever. I think the taxi driver, the female taxi driver. You see her feet accelerating.
Oh,
literally,
I mean,
the opening.
I'm pretty sure you see John Travolta, not John Travolta, Bruce Willis accelerating when he goes to run over Ving Rhames.
Yeah, and then there's a whole literally 8-minute conversation in the beginning about a foot massage. It's just it's insane.
A foot massage that may have ended up with a man getting thrown out of a window.
Yeah, I think that Quentin Tarantino's foot fetish is absolutely fascinating. I don't understand it at all, but I love it, and I think that this movie it goes all out with the foot fetish, because others of his movies, you see the feet. But this movie, there's a whole really long conversation about the ethics of touching someone's feet. And true. Is it sexual? Is it not sexual? Does it have to be sexual? And I love that whole scene when Samuel L. Jackson is just like, no, it's not sexual, blah, 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 blah. And then John Travolta says, would you give another man a foot massage? And Samuel L. Jackson just goes, fuck you, man. Don't ask me that
Argument
question.
Over.
And Travolta's
that's a pretty funny scene.
I need to look up their I always forget their names because there's so many Vincent Jules.
And Jules.
Yeah, it's so hard because there's so many actors in this movie.
I will say too, well, maybe we'll talk more specifically about it, but the chemistry between John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson is perfection. They have great banter.
Yeah. Another quote that me and my dad used to always say growing up is, you want some bacon? No, man. What are you, Jewish? No, I just don't dig on swine. That's all. Yeah, but bacon tastes good. Pork chops taste good.
Oh my gosh. John Travolta's energy in this movie is something.
I think that this is his best performance he's ever given. I think that this is the peak of John Travolta. Granted, have I seen his entire filmography?
Well, I was going to say,
no, but
I've not seen Saturday Night Fever, so it's either this or Grease for me.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few of his movies,
or
not
Hairspray,
all of them, for sure.
But,
yeah, I think that this is, I think that this role, I actually didn't do any research on this because I was going to say, I feel like this role was made for him. I wonder if it actually was. I wonder if Quentin Tarantino wrote this with him in mind.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard, and I did not do any research on this either, so take this with a grain of salt, but that this was a bit of a comeback for him, that he'd been his career had been floundering for several years, and this movie has kind of brought him back into the national consciousness.
And then after this movie, he floundered again for a very long time.
One was Face Off.
Right.
Maybe that's his best performance. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another quote that we used to always say is like, well, I think I'm just going to walk the earth. What you mean walk the earth? Oh my, like we literally would just quote this all the time. I think just me and my dad would do it. I don't really remember I don't think anyone else in my house has even seen this movie. Mm-hmm. I think my mom's not particularly a Quentin Tarantino fan. She might have seen part of this and like not watched it again. But yeah, me and my dad love Quentin Tarantino, and so we would just like quote this all the time. So bacon tastes good. Pork chops taste good. Check out the big brains on Brad. I know. I'm just that line. I know. It's so funny. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. So just, I guess, like, I know we've already kind of touched on this, but I just wanted to make sure that if we needed to have a longer portion dedicated to it, I think that the blocking in this movie is so fantastic. Where people are standing, what they're doing when they're standing there, the moments in which they move. Because they're in the opening, or one of the opening sequences, when Vincent and Jules kind of they go into those guys' apartment to get the case, and when Jules is kind of holding the gun at the other guy's head, you just see Vincent standing in the background holding his gun, and then at one point he cocks it, and then just like him moving around in the background, going to the fridge, looking in the cabinets, lighting a cigarette, Royale with cheese, it's just
him just sort of puttering around while Samuel L. Jackson is grandstanding.
And then also the revival scene where they stab Mia with the needle after she's overdosed. You see like John Travolta and Lance, I think his name's Lance, the character's name,
the drug dealer.
Him and Lance in the foreground, but then in the background, like his wife is there, Lance's wife is there, and she's kind of smiling because she thinks this is fascinating, because she doesn't really care if this woman lives or dies. And then slowly the other woman, who is kind of just smoking in the background, her head appears in there too, and she's like, what's going on? I did
not watch that scene, so I'll take your word for it. But
oh, you didn't watch that scene at all?
Well, you know my thing about needles.
Did you see him draw on her heart with the red magic marker?
That I did see through my fingers.
Okay, gotcha. That scene's so good. But yeah, just the blocking of that scene is so fantastic, and the blocking in this whole movie is great, and just the choices of how people are just moving, and the cinema. It's so well made. This movie is a miracle. I can't. I watch this movie and I just think, how is something like this possible? From very beginning to end, I feel like every single choice was so intentional, from how he directs the actors to the costume choices that are made, to the camera angles, I know I already said all of this, but I feel like every single choice was so thought out, because Quentin Tarantino is known for doing that. Like, he writes entire books that he gives to his actors to be like, read this to understand where your characters cut. Like, I feel like he sits in a basement for years and just plans out these entire intricate stories, and it's amazing. I love it. I love him so much. There's a reason why he's one of my favorite directors of all time.
Yeah. I Can appreciate that. Yeah, what do you think, actually, not to backtrack too much, but what do you think about the title and what does the title mean to you in the context of what the movie is doing?
Um, I don't. The title doesn't really mean much to me beyond that it's a callback to Pulp Fiction that was made in the 50s. Beyond that, I don't really think about it because it's like, oh, it's just kind of making a connection to these types of stories that were written at that time with this type of look. Beyond that, I haven't even thought about it. But your brain is different from mine. So if you have thoughts, please tell me.
No, that's okay. No, I was because I was just, you know, people talk about Pulp Fiction being a very postmodern film, which it most absolutely is. It was really interesting to watch that in that context, seeing the way this is a movie that is the storyline is very disjointed. There's a sort of fracturing and diffusion of the narrative. There's not one main character. You're following many different threads, and you're jumping between several of them. So there's no sort of one person or one storyline that kind of claim to take ownership over the entire movie. And it's a movie that's filled with references to the past and kind of ironic Easter eggs and winks and nods and things like that. Visual cues. I mean, there's literally, they go to a 50s diner where everything around them is some sort of kitschy, pastiche of the 1950s. And the entire conversation between Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta toward the end, where they're talking about the idea of a miracle, and one of them thinks a miracle occurred and the other thinks it did not, and that idea
I
of doesn't
witnessed
even
a freak occurrence.
yeah
You
does it
witnessed
even
a miracle.
matter?
I witnessed a freak occurrence.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter
What
whether
is a
one
miracle,
occurred or
Vincent?
not, because it just depends on the way you look at it, or what the occurrence does to you. These are all ideas that we talked about in my some of my master's courses when talking about what postmodernism is doing, and post-secularism, and this idea of an ambiguity, and living in the liminal space between something supernatural is occurring and something supernatural is not occurring, and how you're finding meaning in that liminality, and even without a definitive yes or no answer. So yeah, I found the movie really fascinating to watch as this sort of um, like the poster of postmodern art, and finding meaning out of all of this sort of fracturing and disjointedness and pastiche from the past, and being able to create something new out of all of that.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've always known, but I think is really coming to the forefront as we're recording more episodes of this podcast. When you watch movies, you're really, really looking for like a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean? Whereas my perspective is I'm just here for the ride, and how is this movie making me feel?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you don't also feel things when you watch movies. And that doesn't mean that I also don't look for meaning when I watch things. But I don't know. I just think that I think that me finding meaning is kind of, is supplementary a word? it's
Yeah, you're more
it's
about
kind
the
of,
experience of it, and I'm more about the analyzing and dissecting the meaning afterward, I think,
yeah.
in
And it's
certain
like we
ways.
both have the other experiences as well, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not what we're looking for going in or what we're hoping for going
Mm-hmm.
in.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
I'm
so
one.
this
Now
is,
I
for me,
yeah.
this was a movie where I I won't say I hated the experience, but I definitely did not enjoy the experience in the way that you do. There's some
Mm-hmm.
scenes that I agree were hilarious and I really enjoyed, and there were some scenes that were really hard to watch, and I think I find the characters a lot more unlikable and difficult to connect to than you do. But it was a movie where I came away with it thinking about a lot of different things and trying to unpack and analyze what is going on. Why are these choices made? What is Quentin Tarantino saying? Things like that. And that's what I think I do ultimately really respect and like about it. But for you, it's much more about the actual experience of it and your fascination with the characters and what's going on and what's going to happen next and things like that. which is a very different but equally valid to experience.
Which characters did you not find likable? I'm curious.
All of them?
Because I literally like every single character in this movie. Like there's
Wow.
none of them that I don't like, except for actually no. Tim Roth I don't like and Honey Bunny I don't like. I think that no, it's not that I dislike them. I just think that they're bad people. Whereas everyone else it's like,
they're all bad people.
But I don't think so. I don't think that they're all bad like no, I
they're
think
different. They're different levels of bad people. No, I won't say they're all bad people because Fabienne, Bruce Willis's girlfriend, she seems fine. And that's about it. But they're all different levels of bad people. They're all compelling characters. Like, don't get me wrong. You can be an unlikable character but still be compelling to watch, like a Don Draper, for instance. So, I'm not saying that they're bad characters. I'm not saying that they're poorly written. I just find them unlikable as, I would cheer if you got your comeuppance to one degree or another.
I mean, I think that these people are super likable. Like I would hang out with all of them except for Bruce Willis. I would not hang out with Butch. Yeah. But I feel like the rest of the characters, I would be like, hey, let's hang out sometime. You seem like a fun person. Will I participate in what you're doing? Absolutely not. But you seem like a chill person to hang out with.
Yeah. I think I found Samuel L. Jackson's character, Jules, to be the most likable by that definition. Like I would love to hang out with him and hear all of his thoughts on various things.
About walking the earth.
While walking the earth. That's a bum. You know what that is?
That you've decided to be a bum. How long you plan on walking the earth? I don't know. If I need to, I'll walk forever. What is a miracle, Vincent? An act of God? And what's an act of God? When the impossible becomes possible? I've watched that scene so many times. I could quote the whole thing. Ugh. What matters is that I felt the touch of God. And then I just love how that whole conversation concludes with, I'm gonna take a shit. Because he's like, I'm not having this conversation
times in this
anymore.
Movie, Vincent is leaving conversations to go take a shit or to go take a piss. And
they're crucial moments every single time.
Bowel movements.
He literally lives because of certain moments when he goes to the bathroom, and he literally dies.
He literally dies because of when he went to take a piss, yeah.
And I also love that this movie obviously is not in chronological order, but I love how you can see the continuity between things, even though they're not in order. And I love how if this movie were to go in chronological order, every scene after this diner scene, Jules is not in. So it's it's clear that he did get out of the game and he is walking the earth now.
Yeah, I did not even think about that.
After that diner, we don't see him again if the movie was in chronological order.
I mean, granted, I don't think there are that many opportunities that he would have been in it, but I like to think that he got out of the game.
They could have written him into the scene where he goes to find Bruce Willis at his apartment. He could have been written into the scene, he could have been written into other parts, but he wasn't, because there's a lot of Vincent after this. But
yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, which, can I just say, I do love the way that this movie is structured. That's sort of, I don't know if you would call it a ring structure, but it's sort of the way it sort of starts and ends in the same place, and then you're cutting to different times in between, kind of leading to the middle and then going away from it. And yeah, I think it's structured really, really interestingly.
Yeah. And the fact that it all works is just, it's so methodical. It's so well executed. And there's so many just innovative things that are done here. There's so many things that were just they hadn't been done before. Or just, I love it. There's so many. This movie is groundbreaking, I guess, is what I'm saying. In so many ways, this film is groundbreaking.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Which of the story segments is your favorite, if you had to pick a favorite?
Don't do this to me. Don't make me do this.
Like making you choose one of your children.
I feel like this is what I'll choose, because I think that this is something that could be taken out and be a complete story in and of itself. It could be a short film. You don't need anything before it or anything after it, and it would be a beautiful work of art.
Sure.
It is the scene with Mia and Vincent going out to dinner. That whole sequence, I'm obsessed with how that entire scene is written. Their dialogue, their chemistry with each other, just the dance at the end, the twist, the food that they order, the vibe of the restaurant, just all of it. I think that even though there's so many other moments in this movie that I love, I feel like they benefit from having more of a story revolving around them. Whereas I feel like this scene could stand alone and it would not benefit from having more around it. It is what it is, regardless of whether there's more or less.
Yeah.
I will say, I love it.
I will say Jules is the character that I find most likable or most sympathetic of the sort of main characters, not the innocent bystanders. But I think Mia is the character that I find most compelling. I had never really understood Uma Thurman as an actress fully, I think, until I saw this performance. I was like, oh my goodness, she's fantastic. You know, you cannot take your eyes off of her every time she's on screen. And the character that she's playing, where she's this sort of, you know, trophy wife, kept woman of this gangster, but when she's in this context that she's been taken out to dinner with one of her gangster husband's henchmen, she's so in charge and she knows exactly what she wants to do, and she wants to be a little bit playful and she wants to do crazy, silly things, and she's kind of curious about Vincent, but also just really likes exerting her own kind of power and her own quirkiness. Yeah, she's so compelling to watch. It's really fantastic. It's such a star-making performance.
Yeah, I don't even know how to talk about her performance.
I will also say, and again, I have been watching a lot of Mad Men recently, but while watching this movie, while watching that scene specifically, I had the thought, should I start to smoke? They make it look so cool.
I mean, Geneva, I'm a prop buyer. Do you want me to buy you some fake cigarettes?
Please do.
I love their entire dynamic. I love how I feel the reality of just their different positions in this world of
the power differential between them.
Like Mia is the mob boss's trophy wife, like you said, and Vincent is just, I'm just here. I'm just doing what I'm told. Yep. Please just stop seducing me. I don't I know my life is in danger, but also you're super hot, but also I just love how he tries to be apathetic and she pulls him in, and then but then she's also kind of like, no, I'm not into this. But I think it's great. And I love how, you know, even though I said that this scene is perfect on its own, which I think that it is, I love how there is this sequence after this where they go home, and I mean, Vincent is literally in the bathroom long enough for Mia to do a whole dance and overdose, so he literally is giving himself a pep talk to not have sex with this woman for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. 20-minute pep talk.
Yeah, and it's just, that's how much power she has, and that's how much tension is being built during this scene. But I also love how the dynamic totally changes once she overdoses, and it's just kind of a snap back to reality of, oh no, this woman is my mob boss's wife, and if this happens, then I'm dead. And, you know, and it's just, and then I love how also after this sequence and this whole intimate night that they have together, we then see them very briefly a few days later, and she just says to him kind of calmly and flippantly, thanks so much for the dinner the other day. And we just move on, you know. I just feel like there's a whole other story there of where are they going from here, although they're not going to go anywhere because Vincent gets killed after being in the bathroom. But I just feel like there's so much, there's a whole world built around these two people, and they feel like real people because of that scene. They don't feel like characters. They feel like real people living real lives. And I also love that moment when they're pulling up in the car and Mia says to him, "Don't be a," and then she draws a square. So she doesn't say "Don't be a square." She says "Don't be a."
And then the movie adds the dotted lines in
Yeah,
case
there's
you're
like
not quite sure what she's drawing.
yeah, there's like the outline.
Yeah.
Also, Vincent wearing a bolo tie. I love it. I think that it's great. I think it's so fitting for his character.
He thinks he's a cowboy.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you roll me one of those, cowboy? You can have this one, cowgirl. So good. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, that whole sequence, just that. I'm sorry, did you just order a $5 shake? Yeah, that's a shake. That's milk and ice cream. That's $5. You don't put bourbon in it or nothing? No. Just checking.
And then he tastes it. That's a pretty good fucking milkshake.
Yep. I mean, I don't know if it's worth $5, but it's pretty fucking good.
Yep.
I love John Travolta is such a good actor in this movie. It's just his performance of, it blows me away. It blows me away. John Travolta is Vincent. He just is. And I think the casting is perfect, which I'm going to do research after this. I wonder if Quentin Tarantino wrote this role with him in mind, because it just feels too perfect to be happen by chance. So let's move on to the Bruce Willis sequence. I will say, this is the sequence that is the least interesting to me. I think not the least interesting, but I don't know. I just think the rape sequence is kind of the part of this sequence that holds it all together and really completes the story of that section. But because I can't watch it, it's just a little... It doesn't connect with me as much. And I do think that Butch is the least likable character in this movie. I think that he just, it really pisses me off when she keeps saying, when his girlfriend keeps saying, you know, "Oh, where'd you get that motorcycle?" He's like, "It's a chopper. It's not a motorcycle. It's a chopper." I'm like, okay, stop mansplaining. They're stop.
Yeah.
It's a freaking motorcycle. Calm down.
Yeah.
It's not a motorcycle. It's a chopper, baby. I'm like, stop. That's annoying.
As someone who had never seen this movie before and did not know where that storyline was going, it is kind of impressive how effectively it sort of gets me invested in their relationship at the beginning when they're being cute together, and then immediately flips the script as soon as he finds out that she forgot his father's watch, and completely flips out on her. And you're like, oh no, this guy is... You know, it's no accident that he killed someone in the ring. He is a dangerous, abusive person, and I'm now afraid for her.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder how and why did they get together, because I guess that's not necessarily uncommon, which is unfortunate, but how did they meet and all of that? But I think I do. One of the things I do like about this sequence is I do think there's a lot of beauty there in the beginning when they're kind of having their whole just intimate time. And I love particularly, I don't know the exact quote, but his girlfriend says at one point something along the lines of, "It's interesting to me how what the human eye finds attractive versus what the human touch finds attractive is seldom the same thing." Yeah. And
what is attractive to the touch and what is attractive to the eye is not necessarily the same thing. Something like that, which was a really interesting idea that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think it's a really profound statement. And I think that if we as a society were to meditate more on that, I wonder how we would change. Because, I don't know. It comes from this whole weird conversation. At least I find it weird, of her saying, "I wish that I had a belly," but it's just kind of like, why are you talking so much about this? But then it hits with this really profound sentence that I think, I don't know. It's just, it's odd, but I think it's beautiful. And I also do like how at the end of this sequence, I like how Butch and Marcellus, how their story concludes in terms of them having this male camaraderie of, I don't know, just experiencing a trauma together. Not that I'm pro people experiencing trauma together, but I like how because of what's happened to them, they kind of see each other in this human light of let's put our petty bullshit to the side and really just look at each other as people. And because Geneva, I don't know if you did watch that sequence, but from what I remember, Butch did have the opportunity to leave and leave
I watched
Marcellus
the whole
behind,
sequence.
but he didn't. And I think that is a really beautiful choice for his character to make. And I think that there's a lot of complexity in Butch because he can be very empathetic and very humane, but then also, like you said, kind of violent and dangerous. And he's an intriguing character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree that it's a choice that shows there is humanity to him. Like you say, he's a complex person. I think Bruce Willis is really great in this movie too. His sort of flat affect, kind of dead-eyed look when he's in the taxi being brought to his girlfriend and he has just killed this person in the ring and you're not sure. Well, I think at least my assumption at that point is that this was a complete accident and he's kind of in shock and processing it. And a little bit later, we find out that he has this whole escape plan set up with his girlfriend. And so whether this actually was a complete accident or whether this is something that he had intended to do becomes more kind of a question later on. But it is really compelling seeing him in this sort of shocked, emotionless state. And there's all of this tension because you don't know to what extent he's a victim in this circumstance, what he's planning on doing, whether he's going to be able to get away. And we've just seen him as a child, learning about the horrific backstory of his father's watch, which is kind of hilarious. I mean, you said this movie is funny. This movie is funny.
I would not want that watch.
It's like, no, it's it's hilarious how he's like, Christopher Walken, of all people, he's like, this was in your, it's in your dad's ass. And
for 5 years, then it was in mine for 2.
And he's like, here.
It's like, maybe I would take the watch if my dad had put it up his ass for like a week. But it was up 2 different people's asses for a total of 7 years. Like, I'm sorry, I don't.
Did you watch it first? Like,
I don't. Yeah,
I think this movie is funny. It's funny in a very like uncomfortable laughter type of way.
Yeah, I think
how we deal with uncomfortable situations. But
so 2 things came up in my mind while you were talking. One of which was, so I don't know if you were able to piece this together upon your first watch, but Butch winning the fight was not an accident, because basically what happened was, so I don't know if you remember the sequence when him and Marcellus were in the bar and there's kind of this repeating.
He was paid off to throw the fight, but then he doesn't. He instead kills the person in the ring. Whether the killing is an accident as a result of him intentionally trying to win the fight, or whether that was intentional that he tried to kill that guy, that I'm not sure about. But I know he was paid by Marcellus to throw the fight, and then he didn't.
Yeah, it is, from what I know, it was intentional that he killed the other man because he bet on himself. He bet on himself to win the fight, and so when he won, that was kind of the betrayal there. But there was something else that you said. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was about Butch and
Fabienne, his girlfriend?
No.
Marcellus?
No.
The taxi driver?
No. First of all, the taxi driver is super weird. I don't know why she keeps asking, like, what is it? I was like, get out of that cab.
Creepy, like, getting off on the idea that he killed a man in the ring was
she's super strange. Weird. I would want out of that cab immediately. Oh, I wrote down how the running chase scene between Butch and Marcellus is quite funny. Because Bruce Willis is Butch is driving down the street after he gets his watch, and Marcellus is walking through the street. He's like, "You motherfucker!" And then Butch hits him with the car, and then he crashes into the thing, and they're both kind of running away from each other, but they're both basically like they can't walk,
Yeah.
but
He's firing wildly and hitting all these random bystanders by
they're
accident.
just stumbling around. It's just great. I thought it was, that's what I mean. This movie is it's just so funny. I don't know. I find it funny.
It is in parts, yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I've just written down so many things here about different moments of the beautiful cinematography. There's a scene in the apartment when Butch's girlfriend is standing there and you see her reflection in the television. Mm-hmm. There's the scene with Butch in the car and the taxi driver. She's got this amazing smoke kind of blowing in front of her face. There's the after the I guess this isn't necessarily cinematography, it's just a choice, but after the rape, when Marcellus cocks his gun, it's in slow motion to show like, whoa, this is really just intense. I mean, there's so many things here that I think are just great. And
speaking of blocking, I was very amused by the scene in the bathroom between Butch and his girlfriend where there's all of this strategic blocking and placement of towels and things like that to mask Bruce Willis's dick.
I don't think it masks funny. Very well, but
no, not completely. It just made me think of Austin Powers.
Oh, I never made that connection, but now I'm never going to be able to watch that scene the same ever again.
Can I talk about how much I love Harvey Keitel in this movie?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, of course you can.
I love Harvey Keitel in general.
Do you find him to be a dislikable character in this movie?
No, I find him very unlikable. I mean, he's laying down the law, and Vincent was really starting to annoy me by that part. So him laying down the law, Vincent was great.
I love that Vincent was like, could you say a please would be nice?
And he's like,
Harvey Keitel's like, what did you just say?
Yeah, he's like,
do you know why I'm here?
Like, literally, I'm here because of you.
Yep. I mean, that whole concept. Do you not find that funny of them sitting in the car and he's like, man, you gotta have an opinion. Then what happened? Oh man, I shot Marvin in the face. It's so funny. It's just, man. And then they have to wash down and they're in these stupid clothes that make them look like dorks, which I think is not well written. I'm like, Quentin Tarantino, he learned he needed to stop doing freaking cameos in his movies because he is not an actor. I know he took acting classes, but he is not a good actor.
I don't know. I didn't think he was that bad, actually. I was kind of favorably impressed. But granted, the bar is like, M. Night Shyamalan in some of his early movies, which M. Night Shyamalan, very talented filmmaker. Love him as a filmmaker. Not a great actor. So, the bar is low for non-actor director cameos in their own movies.
Pete Jackson did a great job in The Lord of the Rings because he never said anything. He just walked by.
The Alfred Hitchcock school of director cameos, which I think is what most directors should be doing.
Yeah. And then another unique editing choice that happens in this sequence. I love how Jules gets off the phone with Marcellus asking for help, and then they're driving up to the house, and there's this kind of subtitle on the bottom that says 9 minutes and 37 seconds later. I just think that that's so witty and it's an unnecessary choice, but I love that it's a choice that was made. This movie is a work of art.
Well, when Harvey Keitel is like, it's 30 minutes away, I'll be there in 10. And then it's 9 minutes and 37 minutes. So he's even surpassing his own speed record.
Yeah, I wrote down 2 quotes of Harvey Keitel in this scene. One of them is, well, I'm a mushroom cloud, motherfucker. And then the other one is, I love this one. Don't be afraid of the soap.
Yeah, that scene where Jimmy is taking so much pleasure in helping Harvey Keitel order them to strip down and wash themselves off. And they're just having a great time forcing these two guys. Don't be afraid of the soap. Oh my gosh. It's so great. I love it. Oh man, it's just fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have anything else to say other than like I could just quote the entire movie, but I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is there anything, Geneva? I would genuinely love to hear this.
is there like, what are your criticisms of this movie? Because you obviously didn't like it as much as I do. And maybe that's just because the tone is not as much your thing. But if there's anything about it specifically that you're like, I didn't think this was well done, or I didn't like this, aside from, the profanities and racial slurs, which is
the racial
a common
slurs
thing for
were
Quentin Tarantino.
Kind of a lot. Kind of unnecessary. I found them more unnecessary than the foot stuff. I mean, I honestly, I don't really have criticisms of the movie apart from that. It's more just, this wasn't my thing. It didn't work for me. But that's it's just subjective matter of taste.
Okay.
I don't have a whole lot that I can levy against this movie and say, I think this was poorly done. I don't understand why they did this, apart from those things. Yeah.
It just wasn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. Not every movie is for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. I was just genuinely curious if there was anything that you specifically didn't like and that was the reason why the movie didn't connect with you. But it sounds like it just wasn't your thing.
I mean, it was for the definitely for the first good chunk of it. I was kind of, I don't know where this is going, and I don't know why I should care about any of this. I don't know what it's actually trying to say. But then by the end, I think it did wrap up in a way where I was like, okay, I can look back now on the movie as a whole and appreciate it as something that is saying something that is clearly very thoughtful and capable of being appreciated and analyzed. So yeah, like I said, it's a matter of taste. It's not to my taste, but I can appreciate that it is well done.
You're making me think of this one interview because, again, going back to what we were both kind of saying before of you like to find meaning. And so for you, even from the very beginning, you were just kind of thinking, where is this going? What is the point of all this? Whereas I'm like, I don't care. This is just fun vibes and super crazy. And because in my opinion, this movie's kind of about nothing. I don't think there's a meaning behind any of it. But you're reminding me of, I almost see you and I as the different sides of this interview, which I think we've talked about this before and maybe you've seen it before. But there's this one news interview that Quentin Tarantino did like 10 years ago. And the newswoman who's interviewing him is like, Quentin, I just have to ask you, what is the deal with all the violence? Why do you do this? And Quentin Tarantino responds, he goes, because it's so fun, Janet. And it's just,
I've seen this, yeah.
It's hilarious. And I feel like I relate to him so much in the sense that people are asking him, why do you have all this violence? Why is it so excessive? Why are you doing these things? And it's just kind of, because why not? Because it's fun, because it's expressive and it makes us excited. And it, for some people, it might not make them excited because they're wondering why, but it's like, it doesn't have to be for a reason. It's just fun.
Well, I mean, isn't it worth though digging into why we would find violence exciting in this way? And if that sort of excitement is a good thing, like, well, I think I appreciate his use of violence because I think it is saying something about us as a human beings, us as a society, that we do find this exciting. And, there's something a little bit subversive in the way that he uses it. But I think it's something that's worth interrogating. I don't know. I would be nervous about just allowing that kind of violence to go by uninterrogated.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that honestly, all humans have within them the capacity to kill people. But I think we know that it's wrong, and so we don't do that. But I think that all of us have that within us. And so I feel like art can be a way to get that out of your system in a way that's not actually affecting anyone. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. This is not me saying that I want to kill anybody. I do not have a kill list. I'm not Arya Stark. I do not have a kill list. I have never wanted to kill anyone, but I do think that all of us have that primal capability within us to kill people. And I think that there is something to be said for the beauty of art, of giving us the freedom to access that parts of ourselves in a way that is okay. And I think that Quentin Tarantino does do it, in my opinion, in a way that's okay, because it's not hateful. It's not, his characters are never, in my opinion, they're never really killing people because, like, I don't know. It's not something. I feel like his movies are just not grounded in reality. So it's not really this concept of, oh, this is someone in the real world who I hate and therefore I want to kill them. And it's encouraging that sort of violence, because it's just, no, this is a fake world. This type of scenario doesn't exist.
Sure.
And
It's so cartoonish, it's hard to take seriously.
It's not a reflection of violence that actually happens in real life, in my opinion. And so therefore it's not really that harmful.
Yeah. Well, he plays with taboos in a really interesting way. I mean, obviously there is the profanity and the racial slurs, which are, again, worth questioning and interrogating, but just in the way that he uses violence, and especially its juxtaposition with humor, so much of the humor of this movie, for me at least, comes from the uncomfortableness of these people are having this inane conversation and banter, and it's really silly. And then all of a sudden they walk into a room and they're shooting people. And there's this kind of humor that comes from this, like, oh my goodness, these two things I never see together. It seems like they shouldn't be together. That's kind of funny because I don't know how else to react. I don't know how else to react to this except by laughing.
I would say I laugh just because I think it's funny. I don't think it's because I don't know how to respond to it. I'm like, this is just hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say that, I do think, I don't know. There's a lot of people that flat out criticize Quentin Tarantino and think that he's just an insensitive person. I don't think that that's true. I think he's just an artist who's expressing himself. I don't think he has harmed anyone in his real life, as far as I know. I don't know his, but he doesn't seem like he's someone who's hateful or is racist or whatever. I think this is just the worlds that he creates. And the fact of the matter is like, there are white people in the world that say that word. And there are people who fought in the war that call the people they were fighting against those words. Like, that is, people do say those things. And so it's not him necessarily saying, this is how I feel. It's him just saying, this is probably what how these characters would act and what they would say. But all that being said, for me, I do think that out of all the movies of his, well, I've seen all of his films, but there are 3 particular moments where, for me personally, I do think he does go too far. I don't think it means he's a bad person, but for me, it's like, I can't watch this. Like, I can't watch the rape scene in this movie. I can't watch the 2 slaves killing each other in Django Unchained. And I can't watch the scene in Reservoir Dogs where they're talking about how just like hurting women by having sex with them for the first time. Like, those are 3 things that I just can't, like, I can't listen. I can't watch because it's too much for me. But I don't think that says anything about Tarantino's character. I think that he just, I don't know. I think he is very open about the art that he makes, and I admire that. And again, like, I don't think ultimately he's harming anyone because the worlds in which he places this violence or whatever it might be, it's not really something that they're not real life scenarios. So
yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it's just like I think it is saying something about our society, and we are willing to license violence against or not against. Particularly when I think about how often his movies, of the the very
of the
limited
3
amount
that
that I've
you've seen.
yeah, exactly. But how often there is violence against more or less innocent bystanders, and in this movie, there's kind of humor that comes from that. Like, I'm thinking of when after the car crash and Marcellus is shooting at Butch and he hits this random woman in the leg and she's screaming, and it's a funny scene, um and I think part of the humor comes from the shock value of, oh my goodness, this poor woman just got shot in the leg, and in this incredibly awkward random situation with these 2 people who look ridiculous because they're shooting at each other even though they can barely walk. And there's that humor to it. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's worth thinking about who are the people who are experiencing violence in his movie, and what is the orientation of the movie toward that violence. And I'm not saying that that's an illegitimate way to use it. I'm just saying it's the way that that scene is framed is saying something at least about us, that we find humor in that sequence of this subjectively like really terrible thing that's happening that is also just really ridiculous and funny. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling. I do think it's really interesting the way that he chooses to use violence, and I think it is, for me anyway, it is really worth drilling down and interrogating, because it does get uncomfortable sometimes. And I think, I mean, like I said before, I have very mixed feelings about the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that's in large part because I can't figure out to what extent that use of violence crosses the line in that context. And I think part of it is because of who the violence is directed toward. Because on the one hand, it's like, oh, these dirty hippie murderers, but then it's also these people who are part of a cult, and who are brainwashed. And so I don't know, I just have a hard time with that ending. So yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of rambling. I find his use of violence really interesting, but also worthy of exploration and sometimes critique.
Yeah, I think I'm actually really glad that you're here, because I think that, I mean, just period. I'm glad that you're here.
I'm glad that you, the co-host of this podcast.
I mean that in more ways than one. But anyway, I'm very glad that I have your opinion here on this particular episode, because I do think that Quentin Tarantino is a very controversial director. He is someone where people either love his movies or they find them very distasteful. And I think that it's very valuable on this particular episode to have someone who's kind of on one person who's on each side of the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I find them distasteful. It's more like I appreciate things about them, but I also struggle with things about them.
Right. But I feel like you connect a lot more with the criticisms that are posed towards Quentin Tarantino's movies. Whereas I think that I kind of think that those critiques are honestly a little bit illegitimate, in my opinion. Like, not illegitimate, but I just...
Yeah, you don't think they have as much validity.
I don't think they're problematic. I don't think that it's I don't take issue with it. I think that it's funny, and I don't think that should be something that is debated. I think that we should just enjoy them for what they are and enjoy his unique perspective. And I think there are a lot of people on both sides. And so I'm glad that we have one person on each side here of, I kind of don't criticize it at all. I do think, like I said, there are certain moments for me where it does cross the line and I can't watch it, but I don't see that as something problematic. I just see that as something where this is really hard for me and I won't watch it, but it's fine.
Yeah.
I also don't see a lot of innocent bystanders in his movies getting harmed. Like, you're saying the one bystander who got hit with a bullet and it's funny. Sure, that's one innocent bystander out of everyone else in this movie that was killed that was kind of justified, other than the people in the diner at the end, but nothing happens to them. They end up leaving and it's not a big deal. Or I don't see a lot of innocent bystanders being harmed in his movies. But again, like, does it matter? Because all these characters are fictional and not real in a universe that's not real and it's fictional. And I feel like his universes are built under the definition of this world is funny and this world is a joke. I feel like that is just the definition of his films. And because of that, I just don't think that the things are meant to be taken seriously. I just think they're meant to be a fun ride. But again, that's just my opinion. And there are a lot of people that are of a different opinion. So just to circle back and repeat myself for a millionth time, I'm glad that we have people of two different perspectives here in terms of just how we relate to the violence that he depicts, because it is undeniable. He depicts a lot of violence and there's a lot of brutality. And I love it. I think it's amazing, and no one else does it the way that he does. And I think that's why he's a master at his craft. But I also can see, I don't necessarily understand, but I can see kind of why people would take issue with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and also to be clear, when I ask these questions about this movie, especially, not so much Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because I do have sort of genuinely mixed feelings about this. But with this movie specifically, when I ask these questions, I'm not really saying I think it's bad. This use of violence is bad, and I don't think it should be here. I'm more saying this use of violence is really interesting. Let's dig into what it means about, what he's saying. Let's dig into what it means about the audience who finds that enjoyable, or what it says about society that watch this movie and really connected to the use of violence. I'm more saying he put it here. Now let's analyze it and figure out what to do with it. And I think,
So,
again, this is kind of the difference between how the two of us approach
yeah.
movies, because you're approaching them as a filmmaker and saying, let me look at the craft and let me experience the ride that the filmmaker put together. And I'm more saying, like, let's look at what the filmmaker left for us and then pick it up from there and analyze it.
I mean, it's literally that interview. Why? Why do you do all this?
Because it's fun,
so
Janet.
fun, Janet. I mean, it sums it up perfectly. I think it's so great. Yeah, and I think also, Geneva, what you're saying is you think that I'm a psychopath.
That is not what I'm saying.
What does this say about the people that enjoy this type of stuff? Tatum is a psychopath.
That is not what I'm saying.
Oh my gosh. It's okay, Geneva. You can say it. It's fine. Yeah, no, I'm not a psychopath.
Yeah.
And that's not what Geneva was saying. I don't want to kill anyone. I'm not a psychopath. I just love Quentin Tarantino movies. Okay, let's move forward a little bit. I'm genuinely very pleased with this conversation. I loved hearing your thoughts. I kind of anticipated that this would be the way that you would receive it. But I'm glad that you stuck it out and you watched it and you persevered. Yeah, and
I'm very glad that
admire
I saw
you.
it. I've been meaning to see it for a long time.
Yeah. And I admire you for weighing the positives with the negatives in your experience. And being very gracious to someone who watched this movie having basically no negative sentiments towards it at all, other than some unnecessary racial slurs that I don't know why Tarantino continues to do that, but whatever. Okay, so moving forward, I will say off the bat, I did not do any critics reviews this time around because if I'm being perfectly honest, my brain is dead from working, and the last thing I wanted to do was deep thinking and research about stuff and read articles and read reviews and pick out blurbs, and I couldn't do it. I tried.
Completely understandable.
I tried, and then my brain was screaming at me, don't do this. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do it. So I don't have any critics' thoughts here, but I will say that on Metacritic, this film has a 94, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 92% fresh. So a lot of people love this movie. And the film actually won the Palme d'Or. I don't speak French, so sorry. I don't know if that's how you say it. But the film won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is a huge accomplishment, especially as only a second-time director. And the film was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, of which it didn't win Best Editing, of which it only won Best Screenplay, which I think is well-deserved. It was also nominated and snubbed for Best Picture. And Best Lead Actor or Best Actor in a Leading Role for John Travolta, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Samuel L. Jackson, Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Uma Thurman, Best Director Quentin Tarantino, Best Editing by Sally Mink. And I think that it should have won all of those awards. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah. This year, I'm not wrong. This is 1994, in which Forrest Gump won Best Picture. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah, because that was kind of a really interesting lineup. This one that I go back to a lot because it was Forrest Gump, it was Pulp Fiction, it was also Shawshank Redemption, and Quiz Show, which is an underrated movie that I really love, and I think I've recommended to you a few times. I would not give it Best Picture over either Shawshank Redemption or Pulp Fiction, but is an underrated movie nonetheless. And then also Four Weddings and a Funeral, if I'm remembering that correctly. So
I think
just
so,
a really interesting
weird
little
year.
Best Picture, lineup. I don't particularly like Four Weddings and a Funeral, I will say, but Kind of nice to see the spread in genre from that year. And
Yeah.
I also would not have given Best Picture to Forrest Gump either. But,
No.
you know, it was what it
I
was. It was a cultural phenomenon at the time.
Forrest Gump is a movie where I feel like I think that it has earned a lot of hate over time
Hmm.
because it won Best Picture. But I think that if it hadn't won Best Picture, people would not hate it as much
It would
because
be
I do think,
more well remembered. Yeah, I
yeah,
kind of
I
agree
do
with you.
think it's an interesting movie. I do think the acting performances are great. I think the concept of Forrest Gump kind of meeting all of these famous people for random reasons that don't make sense is kind of interesting. I do think it's a good movie. I think
Yeah.
the score is fantastic. I love the film score. And I think it's kind of a bummer that people hate on it so much now because I don't think it's that bad of a movie. But
Yeah.
that
I
being
should see it
said,
again. It's been a long time since I saw it.
yeah, but
And I
that
did
being
like it when
said,
I saw it.
Pulp Fiction should have won Best Picture. I think that Pulp Fiction, from top to bottom, is an absolutely perfectly executed
Hmm.
film.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than this. It really doesn't. And I can't believe that this was his second film and he
Yeah.
made it
It's
when he was
crazy.
like our age. Makes me mad. But there's still hope.
Don't look up
Oh,
the age of Orson Welles when he made Citizen Kane.
no, no, I've stopped doing that. It crushes my
Age is
creativity
just
and
a
my
number.
ambition and my drive for things. Um, but yeah, so I guess we can just say our closing thoughts and then we can conclude the episode. But I love this movie. Geneva, I'll let you go. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna repeat myself. I love this movie. What are your thoughts, Geneva?
I
Anything that's gonna stick with you?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there is a lot about this movie that will stick with me. I mean, as I've said many times, I'm really, really glad that I finally watched this movie, and I really do appreciate so much about it. I think it's so well made. The craft is incredible. The acting, the writing, the direction, the cinematography. It's obviously so influential in just the ensuing 30 years of Hollywood and the way that people make movies. So I'm really glad to see it too in the context of that. In terms of things that'll stick out to me, I mean, I really do love that, you know, what you talked about earlier, the scene between Uma Thurman and Vincent, Uma Thurman and Vincent, just using the actress name and the character name. Uma Thurman and John Travolta, me and Vincent in the 50s diner. I think their dynamic is just so compelling. And then I mean, I love every scene with Samuel L. Jackson. He's my MVP of the movie, but particularly the scene in the diner at the very end when they're talking about that idea of miracles and miracle versus a freak occurrence, and then the showdown between uh, Jules trying to command the room and get Ringo and Honey Bunny out of the robbery without any more violence happening.
I'm trying very hard to be the
Yeah.
shepherd.
It's just great. It's so great. So yeah, I think those two things are going to stick out to me the most.
Yeah, that whole monologue at the end that he gives of just him being like, I used to think that this Bible passage, which is not even a Bible passage, I used to think that this Bible passage was just something intimidating that I could say to someone before I
Yeah,
killed
where he
them.
keeps
But
reframing it. Who
now,
are we in this story?
yeah, he
Yeah.
reframes it like 3 times. And then his final conclusion of, I've determined that you are the weak is just so how do you even respond to that, man, that's just like crushing.
Which I need to go
um
back and reread that quote now like 3 times and see what he's
there's
saying
so
each
much
time he
there.
reframes it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much there. And his final conclusion of you are the weak
And
and I'm
I'm the
trying to be the shepherd,
Yeah, he says,
or
I'm the
something like
tyranny of
that.
evil man, but I'm trying to be the shepherd.
Or I think the gun is the tyranny of evil man and he's trying to be the shepherd, something like that. I
Something
know
like
he
that. I don't know.
concludes with Tim Roth, the gun, and him. There's 3 different representations there. But yeah, thank you for watching this movie, Geneva. I don't know if you will be rushing to watch more Quentin Tarantino movies, but I hope that you will continue to watch more of his films. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially since you found so much. You felt like you discovered so much with Uma Thurman in this role. I would love for you to watch Kill Bill and hear your thoughts, because, man, Uma Thurman is a badass. Yeah. She's so great, and she's so compelling.
She's one of those actresses that she is so talented, but I think she started really promisingly in her career, and then her career has kind of struggled at various times over the years. And so the time that I've been paying attention to movies has not really been the time when she has been excelling in, picking really great projects or being really prominent in them. So rediscovering her other roles where, earlier in her career has been a really great gift to see what she can do. And I hope she gets more opportunities in the future to show what she can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What has she been up to, actually? I feel like I haven't seen her around in a few years.
I feel like being a mom, maybe? I don't know. Maybe she's a producer now or something, but I haven't seen her in a while. Have you seen her in Gattaca?
No, I've been meaning to see Gattaca.
I think you would like Gattaca a lot, actually. I think that you would really like Gattaca.
Okay. Yeah, I would really like to see that.
And also, if you're a fan of Samuel L. Jackson in this movie, you should watch, period, you should watch Jackie Brown. Also, you should watch Do the Right Thing, which we'll discuss on this podcast at some point, because Do the Right Thing is amazing. But Do the Right Thing, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I think that was kind of Samuel L.'s first role where he was really being like Samuel L.
Jackson persona. Yeah,
and I mean, he's just this screaming radio host.
I did not know that he was in that movie, actually.
Oh, like I said, I think that was his first, or one of his first roles that put him on the map, especially as this just like outrageous swearing, screaming man who everyone loves because he's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing Goodfellas for the first time, and he has a small role in that, and just getting so excited. Oh my gosh, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, he's one of my dad's favorite actors. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think my mom did Samuel L.'s hair on some show she was on or movie a while ago. And my dad was like, what?
Can you get an autograph?
Oh, man.
That's awesome.
But anyway, yeah. So thanks for joining this conversation. Thank you for watching the movie, even though there might have been points when you didn't want to keep watching. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, my needles phobia, which you know about, I'm very used to. It's nice to have warning, which you gave me, which was very nice, because I'm very used to having to watch certain scenes through my fingers.
Yeah, I can handle needles if they're not being injected, but once they're,
Yeah, I mean, just a shot of a needle is fine. It's the needle going into the human body, which I struggle with. Yeah.
Especially a big one right into someone's heart that they drew with red. Where's the heart? Oh, I don't know where it is. Do you have a magic marker? What? A magic marker, something.
Lan's trying to find his medical book, and his wife is like, just, you're not going to find it. Just get over there.
It's like, you take the needle. No, you take the needle. No, you do it. No, you do it. Ah, you brought her into my house. This is your fault. This is not my fault. Ah. Oh, it's so good. Boy. Yeah. I mean, maybe we should have gone through this movie sequence by sequence so we didn't forget anything, but it's too late now. I feel like we did touch on most of the sequences,
we definitely touched on all of the major storylines, and I think we've touched on basically every scene, even if we didn't cover it extensively.
Yeah. I think we did kind of touch on all of them now that I think about it. Yeah. All right. Cool. What are we talking about next week, Geneva?
Well, next week we are also going to be talking about meditations on violence and masculinity and nostalgia for... Anyway. No, we're doing... Well, no, that's not entirely... It's not entirely a joke. No, we're doing The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the 1962 Western starring John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart. So, yeah. Excited to rewatch it because it's been a few years. Sorry, go ahead.
This will be the second week in a row where the person who is not the host is going into the movie not necessarily with the highest of hopes.
Tatum famously does not like Westerns. So
yeah. I've had many people try to convert me. They're like, well, if you watch this one, you'll really start to see you'll really start to enjoy Westerns. And every time I watch one, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not into it. So,
Well, I'm not necessarily expecting or hoping that you will be converted. I certainly hope you don't hate the movie, but
even if I do, I will be as gracious to you as you were to me today. Not that
well,
you hated
thank you.
Pulp Fiction,
Yes.
but
I will say too, I was really going back and forth between this movie and another of my favorite westerns, which is Rio Bravo, which is coincidentally one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies. In the end, I went for this one just because I thought there was slightly more of a chance that you might like it than Rio Bravo. But I also, I
ooh, we'll
don't,
have to talk about why next week. I'm curious as to why you think that.
yeah, well, we'll see. Like I said though, I'm not necessarily expecting that you will like it or you'll come to some new appreciation for westerns or anything like that. I just, between the two, I thought, well, maybe we'll start with this one. We'll do Rio Bravo a little bit down the road.
How
So,
long is this movie?
I think it's also slightly shorter than Rio Bravo, which is one of the other reasons that I
Because I
wanted to
feel like
switch to it.
westerns are always like 4 hours, and I just can't.
I think this one's around 2 hours. Rio Bravo is definitely more in the 2:15, 2:30
Okay.
realm. That's kind of a slow, vibesy, a lot long periods of the movie are kind of the characters hanging out with each other type of
Ugh.
movie. This one, it's been a few years though since I've seen it. I don't remember everything about it, so we will see.
It's got Jimmy Stewart in it, so that
Hmm.
excites me enough to not be dreading watching
Yeah,
this
there you
movie.
go. Watch it for him.
So thank you, Jimmy Stewart, for giving me hope. Okay. Well, that's it.
That's it.
Bye.
Wow. So final.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpickpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Till next time.